Hey everyone, Harry here to talk about the aftermath today in the courtroom of the district court judge, Judge Paula Zennis, who has ordered initially the return of Abrego Garcia, and the tug of war that has already started with her and the Department of Justice in the execution of the Supreme Court's unanimous opinion that came out yesterday, basically affirming her and saying the United States has done something lawless and needs to remedy it. Okay, but this hovering here and often in the assertions of expansive power in the Trump administration is the idea that, oh, this is national security and you can't make us say anything, etc. In the Boasberg case, recall, that is to say the whole Abrego de Garcia class action and the people who were deported notwithstanding Judge Boasberg's orders, there was this same kind of back and forth where he would say, I'm not looking for classified information, I want certain facts and the like. And Judge Zennis obviously has gone to school on this because she is being, on the one hand, very firm, but on the other, not making herself subject to the charge at the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court that she is insisting on national security information. So she said the Supreme Court unanimous ruling basically affirms her, and what she's doing tells her to clarify what she means by effectuate the return of Abrego Garcia, and basically to, for her to understand that you can't, at the end of the day, completely compel a president to do anything and everything and go to war, with a foreign country. But I think everyone understands we have the kind of relationship, for God's sakes, we're paying them to house these people in their torture gulag, that it shouldn't be hard to bring him back. So that's the kind of dynamic. And so this morning she said, I want him at 9:30. They didn't produce. And then she said, I want him at 11:30 and I want this certain information. And they basically didn't produce. We just don't have time, etc. Now, on the one hand, that's a pushback. But on the other, it's a pushback not on the basis of we are mom and can't tell you word one because this is all you weeding in our garden and this is Article 2 sacrosanct stuff. That is really not a position available to them after the Supreme Court holding, unless they are prepared to basically here and now provoke the constitutional crisis by saying we're not going to listen to anything the Supreme Court said. So they are bobbing and weaving and saying we'll give it to you later, etc. When they finally 2 hours later came out with their brief, they said it's just too soon, we don't know the information yet, the reality is we just don't have it. And that's the kind of step in this tug of war that is going to be happening, but where Zennis has really been well armed, if she keeps her cool, Judge Boasberg was the model of this, to just keep pushing on them. And first, she's made it clear, I'm not asking for anything classified. I want to know where Abrego Garcia is right now. This is a man who's been terribly mistreated and the victim of a constitutional aberration. My question is, where is he? And she has put them on notice that she's going to have, they must tell her every single day, where is he and under whose authority, what actions they have taken to comply. Her order, remember, was under effect until Chief Justice Roberts did that administrative stay a few hours before it was due to expire. Were they, and she wants to know, basically doing nothing and playing a game of chicken, that there'd be a stay in the Supreme Court? I'll bet they were. But that means they were flouting her order. And then third, she wants to know, what's your game plan? How are you going to get him back? So she has anticipated the strong possibility that they will try to say, we tried, but we just couldn't do it. And that's not going to do it for her. And I think the courts will back her up. What do you mean you tried? Who tried? get him in my courtroom, put him under oath. What did they say? Did they try this? What didn't they do? And they'll continue to try to bob and weave and obfuscate and extend, but this isn't going away. And one of the things that make it really excruciating for the administration is it's binary. He's coming home or he isn't. If he comes home, as I think eventually he basically has to, they look like losers, which they hate to do. But if they never does, then if nothing else, this is capturing all the oxygen of what things the administration wants to do, as day after day after day they protest, we can't bring him back, even when I think everyone pretty well understands that, oh, come on, of course they could. And there's this difficulty in the law generally where it's very hard to call out an administration or an executive branch official as a liar. And of course, that's ungainly here because they are liars. But I think the courts are pretty aware of it. I think Judge Zennis is aware of it. And she's just not going to let them get away with loose excuses and vague protestations. She will, day in, day out, push on them. And it's possible, I talked about this in my Substack today, that the 5 conservatives who went along at the Supreme Court would at some point say, enough is enough. You must let this man rot in El Salvador forever. But as long as it's pretty clear, as I think it will be, that they haven't tried very hard, and if they did, they could bring him home, then I think this will be an open sore for the administration. I analyzed this in much greater depth in the Substack, but they don't want to bring him home. They lose if they bring him home. He's going to talk about the terrible circumstances in the prison if they bring him home. There may be others who are there and they've got a whole new problem. But otherwise, they're just going to have to day in, day out, prevaricate and say the dog ate my homework and try to push pretty vague and phony baloney excuses having to do with the national security, knowing that it's unlikely from the evidence of this week that the higher courts are going to back them up, and they'll be really taking on this biggest and most, ultimate of confrontations in a very weak setting, where the position they'll be arguing for, as if it has such Article 2 gravity, is to completely, without due process, send somebody down by mistake and nevertheless not have to lift a finger or do a damn thing about it. I think that's going to be a really hard one for them to persist with. And somebody's going to have to realize sooner rather than later it ought to be. But if it's later, Zennis will keep their feet to the fire that, they need to bring him home, or this will be not just a legal, but a political quagmire that is really going to impede anything the administration wants to do. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.